Here we are.
Lord Dwyer Schlecke, Bill Schlecke, Jackie Austin in the house from Thinking Real Estate. And Bill Schlecke from,
Schlecke Law Firm.
there you go. Welcome.
Specializing in real estate. Isn't that convenient?
That's all I know,
You do not.
real estate.
I thought lawyers knew they could talk about anything,
come
whether
on.
they knew about it or not.
They do.
No, I can answer a question only if it relates to real estate in some fashion. I don't pretend to know much about the rest of the areas of law.
If you say so.
Trust me on this one, I'm
All right.
a lawyer.
All right.
Trust me. So in the mail, I wanted to talk about assessments because we are now starting to get these wonderful notices that say, for the camera, I'm going to
This
hold
is
it
not
up.
a tax bill, it's a notice.
This is not a tax bill. It's a notice of assessment, taxable valuation, and property classification.
So what does that mean?
So we got our first one. And it shows you what your taxable value, assessed value, and state equalized value are. And it should show you, and it shows you what your homestead is on the property.
Whether you're homesteaded or not? What
Yes,
you're talking
and
about?
what the percentage is. And then it shows last year's, and then it shows this
Well, the
year's.
percentage on most people's 100%. What you're talking about, the percentage of the property that is homesteaded?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the answer.
It's a rhetorical question.
What are you talking about?
It's a
Well, I'm
rhetorical
trying
question.
to talk, and
Okay.
you interrupt me.
Uh,
So anyhow, and then it shows the current year, 2014, what the proposed taxable value, assessed value, and state equalized value is, and what that change was. So the minute I get one of these, I pull out my calculator and make sure that it wasn't more than 5% and change.
Right.
What do you do, Bill? Oh, you don't usually see
I just
them.
wait until somebody's got a problem and they call me about it.
Right.
That's what I do.
Right. So,
Or I teach a seminar on it is what I do too.
So how can you protest?
well, it was interesting because I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were talking about their property and how their taxable value and assessed value has changed, and it sounded like
It didn't get lower, did it?
it
You
went.
jump up and down
it
and you
went
curse
up.
the government and the bureaucracy, and that's how you protest it, right?
Yeah, but it went
Absolutely.
up quite a bit. It didn't go. It went up more than by state law, and you can correct me, which I'm sure you will if I'm wrong. Your taxable value and your taxable value cannot go up more than rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less.
Okay.
Right?
And I did the math on this.
Unless there's a correction, you know, if they had omitted property or something. But based upon the value, strictly value of the existing property, it cannot go up greater than the lesser of 5% or the rate of inflation.
Now my assessed value and my state equalized value can go up any amount. Is that correct?
Yeah,
That's not capped.
your taxable value is your assessed value is 1/2 of what's known as true cash value, TCV. True cash value is determined each year by the assessor for every property within the assessor's taxing jurisdiction on December 31 of each year. That's what's known as the, quote, tax day, end quote. That is the only day that assessors work, oddly enough, is one day, December 31. They determine the value of all the property, real and personal, within the
That's a busy
jurisdiction.
day for
It's
them.
very busy.
Real
You want to stay off the road on that day. Okay? Because
Real
they're
and
driving
personal.
everywhere.
Wait a minute.
Personal property taxes are also
For
determined in
businesses,
valuation.
but not personal property
Yeah, not
in your
for
home.
residences.
Okay.
So
And then, and some people may not know the time frame an assessor goes back. They use a 2-year period of time to determine the true cash value. And do you know what that time frame is?
True cash value is market value of the property. They are required to use the appraiser standards. The statute says that they use Appraisal Institute standards. So it, in essence, is an appraisal of the property that day, but I don't know what the standard says in terms of how far back they can go in terms of comparable sales.
Yeah,
I
the
don't know.
sales study, it is April 1st. So if they're doing 2014, I gotta do the math here. It's gonna be April 1st, 2012 through March 31st, 2013.
Well, no, tax day is December 31st, so.
I
if
know, but
it's-
those are the period of time in which they use the sales.
All right, well, you would know better than I don't know.
Well, I'm reading it right off of a fact sheet.
And if it's in black and white, it must be true.
Right, well, it's from the state, so. So my question is, this particular person's taxable value went up more than the 5%. And their question was, if they appeal it to the tax tribunal, if they appeal it anyway, is that an automatic uncapping of that tax?
No, not at all, but the first order of business is if you get a tax bill that shows your taxable value went up more than 5%, you immediately contact the assessor and you say, what's going on? And it probably is a clerical error on the part of the
And
assessor.
we've had that happen.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. So you the first order of business is when you get your notice of assessment, if you don't like it for whatever reason, and I'm talking about, for a rational reason, contact the assessor. It's a difficult time to get to assessors right now because they are so busy, but leave a message. Hopefully most assessors I know are diligent. They want to try and resolve things before they get to the board of review. Talk to the assessor. If you think there's going to be a problem, particularly if you bought the property during that last year and you know your taxes are going to get uncapped and you're worried about what it may be, call the assessor back when you bought the property or sometime during that year to have a conversation with the assessor to see what the assessor is going to do about it. Assessors cannot simply take the property statement, the real property statement from the sale, and take the sale price and make that your true cash value. They're prohibited by law from simply taking sale price. They can consider it, but they must do a full-blown appraisal or analysis of true cash value.
Correct, and they're not gonna look at the whole township or municipality boundaries to determine that. They're gonna look at a specific neighborhood that's comparable to the property that it sits in.
The appraisal institute standards are such that they have to use comps. I don't know what those standards are within such and such a distance of the property. Again, it would depend upon how unique the
Now,
property
over
is.
the last several years.
It's a guess, isn't it?
No, do not tell an appraiser or an assessor that they are making a guess as to the value of the property. It is
Why not?
an extremely scientific process. There are three methods of appraising property:
Okay.
cost, replacement, and market. Residential property, the most appropriate method is market. They have to go out and get comparable sales, other three-bedroom homes, same style, same general period of construction, getting sales data. So no, it is not a guess, and I agree with appraisers on this. All the appraisers, far and away, the appraisers I know try to do a very, very diligent job in terms of coming up with comps. They want to be as close to what that market value is as possible because they don't want to get challenged. Same thing with the assessor. I deal with assessors all the time. Most of the appeals I do, virtually all the appeals I do, are commercial properties just because it's hard to hire a lawyer to do a residential appeal. But I sit and I talk to assessors and we go back and forth and we present our documentation. Most of the times I can resolve something with an assessor before ever getting to the board of review. Board of review, same thing. They have to consider all these things, but board of review, I think it's more difficult to overturn. I have greater success at the tax tribunal, and even that is sometimes difficult. But residential appeals are easy to do. You don't have to hire a lawyer to do a residential
Okay,
appeal.
you had a $200,000 house.
Yeah.
We had the meltdown.
Yeah,
Then it's worth $100,000. What happens to the taxes?
goes down.
Should go down.
There's
And
nothing
that's-
under Prop A and
and
under our
that's-
tax code that says it can't go down more than 5%. And the assessor has an obligation to lower that assessment to whatever the market is. And in fact,
So that would be significant.
oh, it was huge. Municipality, the largest source of income for municipalities in the state of Michigan is the general property tax.
Right.
And the municipalities got hammered as a result of the Great Recession and the reduction in properties. I feel sorry for assessors during that period of time.
Well, don't you
because
feel
there
sorry
was
for them now? Because people's taxable values will go up.
Yes.
For the most part. I mean, not everything. And the one I'm looking at right now, I just calculated, our taxable value went up 1.016%.
So that's not much.
No.
No, but it can't go more than the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever's less. Now, our assessed value on this particular property went down.
But here's the deal. Okay, let me tell you. many property values went down. The 200,000 to 100,000 is a very common scenario. They diminished down to about 40% of what their pre-recession value was. And the law has no limit as to how far it can drop and what the percentage is each year. But once you drop down to that 50%, let's say, now all the assessor can do is, even if real property is appreciating at a rate of 10 or 15% a year, your taxable value can only go up that max of 5%.
Now,
So-
what can uncap a taxable value? For example, what type of renovations do you know can uncap?
There are certain renovations that, if they're energy related, repairs, and not improvements or additions, there's certain exemptions under the statute. I could give you the actual statutory list if you
So
give me a little
normal
advance
maintenance
notice.
and repair items such as replacing
Those are-
siding, roof, furnace, windows, remodeling of kitchen or baths.
That does
Now that's
nothing.
remodeling of kitchens and
Generally
baths.
not,
And other maintenance items will not cause
right.
an increase in taxable value. New items, however, will, such
You add a
as
guest room or.
deck. No, yeah, if you add a
Right.
physical
Right.
to your property, deck or patio, finish your basement, add air conditioning, and you didn't have air conditioning before.
So if you have a deck and replace the deck,
You're okay.
you're okay.
Yeah. Or a
If you,
new
if
bathroom.
you expand the deck though, now you have an improvement. In
Well,
other words, if I had a 20 by 20 deck and I build a 40 by 60 deck, now I've got a taxable
But if
improvement.
something's removed, so let's
Who's
say.
gonna know that?
Yeah, a lot of this
You're
stuff
supposed
gets
to get a
reported by
permit.
your neighbor that you don't get along with.
Right.
by the
No,
way.
come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are also aerial photos. Assessors will look at aerial photos.
No, they won't.
And most
sure they- I have-
assessors go
and
past
I have-
property
I have a
on a
personal-
regular basis. Most assessors will do at least a visual exterior look at property on a 1 or 2 year basis.
But no, assessors will look at your GIS maps, your aerial maps, to determine whether or not there's been an improvement to property. Absolutely.
And especially in today's
Absolutely.
world where taxable values have dropped so much, those assessors, they're trying to
Okay,
capture every tax dollar they possibly
Because this is a
can.
radio show, the listening audience can't see the chuckle on your
Jackie,
face.
put the camera on.
Right. But,
Yeah.
but let me tell you that I have a personal case in which that was involved, where the assessor saw, and actually went back, there was a pole barn. It wasn't a new pole barn that was put on, but it turned out it had never been reflected in the assessor's records. Why, I don't know. And so they now included it as omitted property, and the way the assessor found out about it was from an aerial photo.
But that building was from,
Oh,
I mean-
40 years old.
yeah.
But they can add it because it's
Hello?
omitted property. It was never put on a tax bill, even though they made a mistake in the past. Doesn't matter, they can put it on as omitted
Now, if
property
you
now.
remove a garage, you know, our properties are all deteriorating, right? If we don't maintain them, and so you've got a garage that
Right.
needs to be pulled down, that can lower your taxable value because you've taken away an asset. Just as if you had a fire or something like that.
But if you take down a garage, unattached garage, put one back up, no problem.
I don't think that's an issue. I think you're simply doing a replacement of the existing garage. Now, understand
Well,
that
now-
if you put in a nicer garage and it increases the, I don't know the answer to that one, Laura. It's
Okay,
gonna
on this
increase the
pole,
value.
how did this pole barn, that wasn't being taxed?
Wasn't being taxed. It wasn't, the property was shown as entirely vacant. There was no house on it. It was
Okay.
entirely vacant. And so what happened is, for some reason, the assessor happened to be looking at the aerial maps and saw that in fact there was a structure
They
on
may
the
have
property.
assumed when the property was split that
I don't know
outbuilding
what the
went with
reason.
the
All I can
house.
tell you is that the pole barn was discovered by virtue of an aerial map, and so
And had
now-
been there 40 years?
Been there 40 years. Yeah. And it's what's known as, quote, omitted property, end quote. So the assessor is now correcting the record, and the assessor is entirely right in doing that.
So you're going to want to look on your notices that you're getting in the mail right now, whether it's homesteaded or not homesteaded or partially homesteaded. And the reason is if it's anything other than 100% homestead, you're going to pay higher property taxes.
Yeah, and also look at it, but so many people look at it and they say, oh my gosh, the taxes are so high, my neighbor down the street isn't getting taxed the same. If you decide to appeal, you don't just show up at the Board of Review and say, hey, I don't like my taxes. You're going to have to go out and get an appraisal of the property. You can try a broker price opinion, but they're not, you can't
You
use it
call
as
the
evidence.
assessor's office and see if they'll take that before you.
Yeah, but essentially to appeal one of these, you really ought to go get a good appraisal from a qualified residential appraiser if it's residential property, and approach it in that fashion. Because if you just show up and complain,
You could make your own assessment, couldn't you?
no,
No.
Why not?
Yeah, it's
You're not a
you're not a qualified appraiser. You could go out and try and get.
You're a
comps, et
radio
cetera.
host.
Well,
Do you
you can
think
get-
you know what the value of property
No,
is?
no, because you don't have the ability.
Well,
as
yeah.
a-
After listening
I
to
do
this show,
exactly.
I know you
Hold
do.
it, I do exactly what the assessor does.
Which is
I
what?
get the comps.
Yeah, but how do
You
you
do
know
that.
how to adjust for different features that your house may have compared to the house next door? You don't.
How does the assessor know?
Let me just say this to
Okay.
you, Greg.
He's had
Okay,
extensive
I'm
Sorry.
playing the devil here.
yeah, and you look
Do
like
it.
the devil, by the way. But here's the deal. If I am cross-examining you as to the first thing out of the mouths of the Board of Review or the assessor or the township attorney is going to be, what are your qualifications? And you will be absolutely destroyed in terms of trying to establish your credentials and qualifications as an appraiser. So you might as well kiss that one goodbye. Yeah, you can show up at a Board of Review with this information, but they're going to look at you with a jaundiced eye because you don't have the credentials. Get yourself an appraiser. If you really are serious about appealing a residential assessment, like I say, first talk to the assessor. Say you can go in with that information, etc. But going to the Board of Review with that, they're just going to look at you. And tell
Well, the
you
other thing I
and
want to
deny.
touch on before we run out of time is many people have a home for sale and they own another home in Michigan. And there is I don't know the technical name of it, but I can have a homestead on two properties.
It's called a conditional rescission of the personal residence exemption.
So if I forgot, and I have
course
to
it is.
file that before December 31st for 2014, is that correct? And let's say I forgot to do that. I have to file that every year.
Yeah, but you have on a conditional rescission, I think you have up until May 31 in order to take advantage of it for the July tax
Oh, okay,
bill.
so it's May 31.
I believe so. You're asking me a question off of, that I'm answering off the top of my head, but the conditional rescission, I believe, you just continue each year and you have
But
to
you have
verify
to
the
file it.
property's vacant, that it's for sale,
And-
and you're not renting it, that sort of thing.
Right. And then the other question, or the other thing I want to point out is that if you're in the market to purchase a property and you are buying one that is zero homestead, you're going to want to get that closed before June 1st. Now that sounds like a long way away, but we just got had a conversation on an offer last night where the closing was proposed for June. And I said, well, they're going to want to close it before June 1 because the property that they're talking about is zero homesteaded. And you have till June 1 to get it 100% homesteaded, so your taxes are less. Correct?
Okay.
Right.
If you have any questions on this,
We'll probably end up talking more about tax appeals because this is the time of year. The
Right.
Board of
And there-
Review meets the Tuesday after the first Monday in March, so we're getting to the time when everybody's going to show up.
It's
at
an
the Board of
interesting
Review.
topic.
yeah,
It is an
and
interesting
there's
topic.
a new one.
And you have to appeal a personal residence or residential appeal, you must go to the Board of Review. Otherwise, you can't go to the tax tribunal.
So if you don't show up at the Board of Review,
You're stuck.
Can you call the assessor?
Yeah, you could still call the assessor. I recommend calling the assessor before the Board of Review to
and if
see
you have a
if you can
problem
work
with
it
an
out.
assessor, what do you do?
You go to the Board, if the assessor disagrees with you and you have an evidentiary basis upon which to support your version of the value of the property, then you bring all that evidence to the Board of Review. As I say, preferably an appraisal, but if you want to try it with less than that, you can.
And how far back can I go? And there is a change in the law, just FYI. You probably know this because you're brilliant. But if
I
you
wonder
have
what she's looking for.
the transfer of property from immediate relatives is now exempt from uncapping.
No.
That's what I just read.
No, there are limitations
I
in
thought I
terms of
printed it
what
for you.
they added. I think it's child, but I'd have to look at it. And there's
Mm-hmm.
also a recent decision dealing with joint tenants, and it must be a transfer from someone who already owns it to another person
Mm-hmm.
who will become a joint tenant with that original owner. Maybe next week we can talk about uncapping and exemptions from uncapping. How's that?
Okay.
All right?
Sounds good. And we have a new listing, which I touched on last week, I believe, at 1982 Grand River, which is Rives, or I think it's Rives Junction. 149.9, a beautiful, spectacular piece of property, just shy of 15 acres. 3 bedrooms, 2 bath home with a 2-car detached garage, and great property. We just reduced the price at $31.26 Pearlman. Now this is a cream puff. All you gotta do is move your furniture in. $89.9. It's 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, just shy of 1,000 square feet.